All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we could have our seats. That's you, Dr. McCauley.
Good evening. Thank you all for being present, and some of you have been here the last hour. Thank you. Okay, we just had a work study on proposed budget, and we will continue with that discussion in regular meeting at a specific agenda item. We'll go ahead and call our regular meeting to order. Roll call.
President Weiner, let the minutes show that all 5 board members are present.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Little, thank you for being able to call in. We'll proceed with a moment of silence and our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and move to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Hey, Dr. Birdwell, we'll go ahead with superintendent's report.
Ms. Sorensen, do we have any awards this evening? Okay, thank you. Governing board, let me just take a moment to say thank you to our community. We've had 3 weeks of lots of conversations and dialogue and emails and social media, and I want to just say for the 150 parents who served on those communication circles, your voices were heard. We appreciate it, and we appreciated you being engaged in the process. But please know that those circles of communications don't stop yet. We still have lots to do as we go forward, so we hope you stay engaged and stay part of that process. There's still a lot of work to do. As you can see, what we did for the governing board was put together an agenda that has 2 months worth of calendars, because we know that the 90 days of May are just about upon us. And for those of you new to the educational field, May has something on every day. So it's the graduation time frame, it's the end of the year concerts, it's the art shows, we're just very, very busy in the building. So we try to put as much out there for you as possible, realizing you can't make all of them, but whichever ones you can, we sure look forward to it. And a special attention to our Teacher of the Year, May 7th, where we celebrate one teacher from each of our schools. It's a wonderful event, and we hope the governing board and your spouses will be able to attend that. So thank you. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. Are there any board comments this evening?
President Whitener.
Mr. Little.
I attended the CT advisory with President Whitener and Mr. Wachovich and Ms. Reese, and just wanted to say that it was nice to have attended that prior to a budget discussion following, to see that, although we're considering cuts, Higley is doing a great job of providing opportunities for kids to go beyond basic education. And the program, the wonderful teachers and students in that program have done an outstanding job, and I just wanted to congratulate them.
Thank you. It was briefly mentioned last week. Ms. Zavarro, would you like to share some news with us?
Oh, yeah, we ought to do that.
Thank you, President Whitener, board members, Dr. Birdwell, Dr. Thomason. I feel like I keep saying names. And everyone in the audience, we are very proud to announce that Centennial was recognized as an A+ excellent school. We got our notice a couple of weeks ago. We are planning tomorrow, or we have a planning meeting, I believe, and then mark your calendars, on May 7th, we will be having a celebration, and we love all of you to be there because we're very proud of the kids, the students, the staff, the community. We couldn't have done this without the entire group, so thank you for letting me announce that.
Thank you, and I look forward to that celebration. Okay, any other comments? Thank you. 6.0, request to speak to the governing board. I will save request to speak in regards to the budget at that agenda item. At this time, I'd like to call it Michelle Bohunko. Sorry, did I get that close?
That was perfect.
Thanks.
Got it perfect. I've never been here before, so
That's
I don't
okay.
know the whole scheme. Do I just tell you why I'm here? Okay. As a parent, in the my son goes to Williamsfield High School, and I'm talking about the athletic department. That I just feel that my son comes home all the time unhappy that he's can't approach the coaches. They say they'll bench him. And I thought the sports was supposed to be a positive influence on him, and he wants to be moved to Higley High School because he doesn't like the way he's being treated with the basketball program and the baseball program. So with the increase in the fees, there was another thing that I already discussed with the athletic director. The director was, I don't mind paying the money to have him play, but when you're on a team and you play 6 games with the B team and the A team plays 16 games, how is that fair for the parents when they're playing 3 times the amount of games than your son's playing? And now with baseball, it's in the 9th game of the season, and he's hit 1 inning. I mean, I go at every game, away, home, he's been to every practice, he went to all the tryouts, and I just, as a parent, hearing him come home saying that he doesn't like the program, it's just really upsetting. So I wanted you to be aware of what's going on, because I'm not getting any responses from the coaches. We've reached out, he's tried to reach out, went to one of the coaches face to face and said, my dad wants to speak with you, never got a call back. So as a parent, in high school, you're trying to let your kid do everything without getting involved. Well, I'm at the point where I need to get involved. So this is why I'm here tonight, so you guys can hear.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We do have your contact information, and we will direct staff to address that concern. Thank you very much. Okay, consent agenda items. I move that we approve consent items.
I'll second.
Second.
Second, Ms. Reese, thank you. Is there any comments, discussion, or questions on consent agenda items? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
President Whitener. If I may, I'd like to introduce someone you've just approved. You've just approved the new principal of Gateway Point Elementary School. I'd like to introduce Tim Fountain, who is coming to us from the Washington Elementary District, where he's been principal for, I believe, the last 5 years. Tim has his family with him here tonight, and I'd like to ask them to all stand and be recognized. Congratulations, Tim. We will be introducing Tim to the staff at Gateway Point here within the next week or two. He's arranging that with Dr. Hendrickson, and there will be an evening event for the community to get to know him as well here in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Fountain. We appreciate that you're here. And thank you to your family for coming tonight. Okay, we're at 9.0 is action information items. We have a couple of first reads. 9.1 is a first read of proposed amendment of policy IE, organization of structure. First reads are a time just to discuss or ask questions, at which a second read will come forward for a vote. This first read is just changing. We're not a K-8 model anymore. Any questions or comments? Thank you. 9.2 is approved certified administrative contract language. If administrator could just maybe highlight some of the language changes on there. Obviously the dates are changed on there.
President Whitener and members of the board. The first contract in front of you does just mainly include revisions of the dates from the 2014-15 school year to update to the 2015-16 school year. You will note that in item number 2 on the first contract in front of you, we also added the addition of the policy that you approved earlier this year, which limits the amount of vacation leave, the accrual of that, and the payout for that leave at the conclusion of an employee's time here in the school district. Linda Good recommended just a fine-tuning in item number 4 with the definition of a furlough. And so you see that language underlined there. And that's really all you have in the first administrative contract.
Thank you. Is there any comments or questions from the board?
Nope.
I move that we approve the certified administrative contract language for 2015-2016.
A second.
Seconded by Ms. Reese. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. 9.3 is approved classified administrative contract language. I move that we approve the classified administrative contract language for 2015-2016.
A second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Of those opposed? Oh, okay. 9.4, sorry, Reese. This is Reese. 9.4, approve certified employee contract language for 2015-2016.
I second.
Any questions or comments?
Nope.
And this has the $301 that are addressed that we did speak about in work study.
Quick question.
Mr. Hoffman.
President Whitener, Mrs. Good, can you quickly, so on under termination on this one, it says the procedures for dismissal as set forth in applicable statute shall be used. Did that change this year, or was that simply just a administrative tweak to clarify that? So there's no new statute or anything that would, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 9.5 is approve classified exempt staff offer at-will employment agreement. I move that we approve classified exempt staff offer at-will employment agreement for 2015 and 16.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 9.6. Approve classified staff offer at-will employment agreement language. So 9.5 was exempt. 9.6, approve classified staff offer of at-will employment agreement language 2015-2016.
Second.
Any questions?
President Whitener,
Mr. Little?
this is just a clarifying question. If classified staff are offered deployment contracts, why would there be an at-will agreement?
Are you asking the difference between the contract and the at-will agreement?
Right. Well, I mean, I understand what at-will agreement is. So normally exempt staff have at-will agreements, but classified staff may not. If they're under contract, why would you do an at-will agreement?
They're not under contract.
Okay, all right. Okay. Okay. Clear.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 9.7, approve classified transportation staff offer at-will employment agreement language for 2015-2016.
I second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 9.8, approve occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech and language pathologist, speech and language therapist, and psychologist contract for language for the years 2015 and 16. I so move.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
I just have a quick comment. It's just a typographical error on, it's the second page where we changed when employees do not work. There's just a typographical error that needed to be corrected. And it's in the same place on all of those.
President Whitener, Mrs. Reese, I caught that as I reviewed this right before the board meeting, so we'll have that corrected. It's the word not, should be spelled N-O-T, and it's spelled N-T-O on all of those agreements, so we'll correct that before we issue them.
Just another educational acronym. We just wanted to throw you.
You never know.
We appreciate you catching it. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 9.9, we have a motion to approve budget recommendations. If we'd like to,
President Whitener.
we'll go ahead and hear a presentation from staff.
Do we need a motion to open it for discussion?
Yeah, just do a second.
Who
Oh, I
moved?
did. I move that we approve budget recommendations for 2016.
Second.
Okay. So we will go ahead and have just. No, we just have to second so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And now we'll all talk about
Alrighty.
it.
As a public business meeting, we can't discuss an item until it's on the floor, and to have it on the floor, there has to be a motion. You're welcome. Alrighty. Now we can talk about it.
So we'll go ahead and hear present information, at which if the community and those present, hopefully we'll get maybe some of the questions answered, at which then we will follow with public comment.
Terrific. Thank you. President Whitener, Governing Board, Community, Cabinet Administrators. Again, let me publicly one more time say thank you to all the contributors to this process. It certainly has been collaborative. Again, I call it mission possible because I don't think that there's anything you can put in front of the Higley community that we can't find the answers for. May not be liked by all, but in reality, we will come to a conclusion. So we do have some filters that we use, and one of those is that we value people in the process, so we keep students at the forefront. We make sure that we have the least impact on student academic achievement as possible. And we're always fiscally responsible in that process. We don't always agree with every decision that is made. We hear a lot of varying opinions. So there's a financial scope to understand what is it that we have to do, what is the reduction really, an analysis, a synthesis, a prioritization, and then a design recommendation that we bring to a governing board. Collaborative process, lots and lots of different individuals, including this year a little social media for me. My last budget and probably the last time I'll look at social media in my lifetime. But we have a big reduction in front of us. The piece to help the community understand is that although the governor's budget has been moved forward and the legislative council has ended their sessions, that is a piece of the budgeting process. The other portion of that, however, is local. We don't end the budget until the end of June, so the balancing of the budgets is still taking place. About February, I send out an email to the principals that cause them to get a little nervous. I say, I'm closing accounts. And that means that there's no expenditures unless it's absolutely necessary. So if you haven't spent your budget gets frozen. If you haven't bought the supplies you need, you're not going to buy them this year. If a position has not been filled, it remains open. And we capture those dollars and we try to create what's called a cash carry forward. That is an estimated amount until you get to the end of June when every account is closed. And actually, even in June, it's estimated. It's just we're a lot closer until the final budget is submitted. I believe that is in July, and then again one more time. We really are working with predictive dollars as close as we possibly can. I just need to say that because the numbers change and that confuses people, and they think, well, there's this hidden pot of gold somewhere, and I'm a little Irish, but not that Irish. $3.4 million in reductions. I've made it a promise as the superintendent of this district that anytime there's a budget cut, that it comes out of what's considered the administrative bucket first. But that doesn't include just the district office. Administrative reductions also include the building. So the first $1 million reduced in this budget came out of administrative reductions. Some here in the district office, some might have come out of another department. Maybe it's IT, maybe it's grounds, maybe it's building. We actually reduced a couple administrative positions in the building levels. We also put in there a couple clerical positions. And then we came back after listening to input from the community, looking at some of that social media, talking with individual board members, and realized that if we didn't find more reduction, it would be hurting programs and kids, and we didn't want to do that. So we found another $450 by taking the department budgets in the district and doing a budget shift. And that means what we've done is we've taken dollars that we have to expend. For instance, it may be plumbing repairs, it may be air conditioning repairs, it may be electrical. But taking some of those dollars and shifting them into 3 different accounts. The 515 is called facility rental. That is where we rent our facilities to churches and other organizations, and we are able to gain a little revenue, and we try to build that account up. A 520 is the dollars that come in through preschool and before school, after school care. And then a 650 is a gift and donations fund that is used for rooftops. Every time a home is sold in the Higley community, either $500 or $1,000 is collected. And over time, we've built that account up to about $400,000. So we believe between a combination of these 3 funds, we can absorb this $450, loosening the budget a little bit more. So that's the 1.45 reduction we start off with, which brings us down to approximately a $2 million reduction. There's a couple other funds that come up during this time, and one is called Prop 301. Prop 301 is in place by the voters until 2020. It can be used, 50% may be used for teacher compensations, not athletics, and class size reductions. The remaining must be used for either dropout prevention or instructional improvements. So you can't put all of it into teacher salaries, but it comes into different forms. So in this district, we've traditionally done teachers pay for performance as well as instructional incentives by 2 checks that we give, one in December and one in July. We also provide instructional support as we onboard around 80 to 100 new teachers every year and provide support in the classroom through the instructional coaches. This next year, however, because of the class sizes and the fact that we have not used growth money to reduce those class sizes, we're recommending that 301 come into assisting with the class size reductions. If you look at the secondary level right now, the high schools have some classes in the 40s. So we've already allocated 1.0 FTE, that's a full-time equivalent, to each of the high schools to reduce class size. We've held in reserve 6 positions that Dr. Nance will use as class sizes grow in the elementary or the middle school in order to keep those manageable. And that allows us to try to stay within the governing board policy of class size. In addition, because 2 years ago we capped the amount of money that was going out into the pay for performance, we were able to build up a little reserve, and with the addition of the increase of 301, be able to recommend a $500 stipend be awarded to every teacher for next year, giving a slight increase to the teacher's income. We are not recommending that money to be put into a contract salary, but be a 301 because it is a fluctuating dollar. Why do that? Well, because there's one thing that we're putting in the budget that's been new to us. We've never taken a furlough day, and as you heard me say a couple weeks ago, I recommend that this year's furlough that was approved by the board last year take place May 22nd. That generates $195,000 that will go in the cash carry forward, which offsets the budget. But in addition, one of the recommendations that had consensus across the board in this process was 2 furlough days for all 12-month employees, both classified and administrative, as well as teachers. It does not include bus drivers, classroom aides, or lunch aides at this time unless we were to furlough on a day where they would be actively engaged. And the answer to that is we would furlough on what traditionally are professional development days so it doesn't impact children. Therefore, bus drivers, classroom aides, and lunch aides are not affected by that. That brings out $195,000 approximately together for 2 days. A average daily range for a teacher, now that doesn't mean a beginning teacher, that means the average in our district is $220 a day, which means they would be reducing their salary by $440. So the $500 Prop 301 offsets that reduction so that no teacher would take home less pay next year than they take home this year. And that's critical for us. We didn't give any raises last year. We're not giving raises this year, and we sincerely do not want to see our teachers shop to the next district. However, that does not help the 12-month classified employee or the administrators, because they will take a loss in daily rate of pay of 2 days if this is approved for next year. And there is no compensation because 301 may not be used for these classes of employees. You would have to take a $500 stipend for those folks out of 001, and that is where we're trying to make our reduction. Now, that said, in a few minutes, Dr. Thomason is going to take you through the budget sheets. We did find some common ground, and I think that was critical. It's important to be able to say, hey, when we start the process, there is some common ground. Amazing, nobody seemed to reject the recommendation of the $1.45 million reduction in admin. So I appreciate that. I didn't have to argue that with anyone. That's 43% of the reductions. And then $550,000 of the reductions really applies to what would be considered certified staff. It's teachers. It's the plan that you'll see in a minute that talks about a partial reduction in gifted teachers, not at all, because we know that that program is valued. It is a partial reduction in media specialists, which are the librarians, but they really don't go by librarians anymore. I was given better information. They are truly called media specialists these days because of the myriad of jobs that they do. And then when you look at the classified employees, the $225,000 is the lunch monitor. That is not a certified staff member. That is a classified staff member. So that takes up about 7% of the recommendations that are coming forward. There is a $600,000 savings in the health savings account process. We think this is a smart fiscal decision. It does, however, affect all employees, but all employees would be provided health care. And you could opt up to a silver plan or a gold plan. To do this would take an education of the staff, because a lot of our folks don't understand health savings accounts, including me. But there are better people in the room who understand that and who use it, who can help others understand.
Dr. Birdwell?
Yes.
I just want to be clear that 18% does not mean that's an 18% increase to that, meaning that's 18% of the amount of budget.
Of the $3.4 million, when you take out $600K, that's an 18% in that category. It is not an 18% reduction in health care. The health care program would remain the same, but you have 3 options to choose from. This is very common in most of the districts in the state, and actually in business ever since Obamacare came in. $390,000 would be those furlough days, and we've already been over that. That equals about 11.4% of the reduction. So when I'm looking at $3.4 million, how does that share of the reduction fall out? Well, these are the categories that are picking these pieces up. But there's some miscellaneous cuts as well, and I titled them parental choice and or change in practice. For instance, the $25,000 not to wash the bus every week or 2 weeks, every 2 weeks is a $25,000 savings. And so that's a practice change. It's a good practice change. But to decide whether to pay for an ACT or not an ACT is now going to be shifted to a parental. If you want your ACT test taken, because it is the college entrance exam, you would pay for that rather than the district fund that expense. So part of it shifts to parents and parent choices, including accelerated reader. I'm going to have Dr. Thomason actually go through some spreadsheets. We're going to slow it down a bit, take some time to talk about why things got moved off the list, why things are still on the list, where commonality and common ground was found, and go through that process with everyone.
I just wanted to say, although we call it common ground, not necessarily we 100% agree that these things should be cut, meaning we have to cut. So the common ground illusion that there are concerns.
Oh, absolutely.
I do have concerns with these cuts, but obviously, if I just want to relay,
I don't want anybody to think that common ground means we're kumbaya, happy, 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 because I don't think anybody's happy, happy, happy about furloughs. But everybody put it up there as a recommendation. Even the administration put forth furloughs. Teachers group put forth furlough days. Everybody put that up there. So we call that the common ground. Doesn't mean people are happy. And it also doesn't mean that the dollar amount on the common ground was the same. You'll see that on cell phones. Dr. Thomason.
Good evening, Madam President, Cabinet, board members, community, parents. Thank you for coming tonight as we go through these worksheets. The first worksheet we have up is the worksheet that had the total reductions that the district needed to make in order to balance the budget for next year. The good thing is that the cabinet and board members were all able to come to a balanced budget. Where the change comes in is how that balance takes place. I'm having a hard time with the mouse here. Okay, so at the bottom of the worksheet, you can see that all 5 board members and cabinet were able to come to a balanced budget, but how we got there were in different formats and different ways. So what we want to focus on first is the common reductions. What areas did all groups agree upon? Okay. The first agreed upon format was the 2 furlough days for our teaching staff and for our staff that works non-student days. We have 2 furlough days there at $195,000 a day for a total of $390,000 total.
Can you scroll up just a little bit?
Okay. Okay. The next common reduction we have is the reduction of the 0-hour bus that brings the students to the high schools in the morning, and that's a savings of $13,314. So we would ask that students that have the 0-hour bus would have to find a different way to get to school to ensure that they're there for their classes in the morning. Then we also have a reduction in the late bus. This is at the middle schools and the high schools at a savings of $26,000. Once again, those students would have to find a way to get home after school for tutoring services or different activities that took place after school on a regular basis. Next, as we mentioned earlier, the bus wash reduction. Instead of washing the bus every 2 weeks, we'd wash the bus once a month. That's a $25,000 reduction. And then we have accelerated reader that we use at many of our schools. That would still be available for parents or PTOs that wanted to sponsor that program, but it would be an 001 M&O reduction of $46,000. The big one we have that was the common reduction is the cap on insurance with the health savings accounts. This is for all district employees that currently work full-time or 30 hours a week, and that's a $600,000 reduction across the districts. The next 3 would be a parent option for taking tests. We have the Explore test at the 8th grade level, the Plan test at the 10th grade level, and the ACT test at the 11th grade level. Currently, the district does pay for those tests, but we would be asking parents to help us out if they wanted to take those tests for their students at a minimal cost. Next, we have the elimination of district-provided cell phones. Now here you're going to see different numbers across the bottom because all groups thought it would be a good reduction, but we did not agree upon the amount of reduction. So you can see the reductions range from $30,000 to $88,000. That is something we'll be taking a look at as far as what groups are needed to have cell phones for both the safety and security of our schools and campuses and the children. The next common area of reduction was the school attendance incentive for teachers. Currently, teachers receive an attendance incentive if they don't miss a day of school, and so we'd be reducing that anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000. And then the final area that we agreed upon would be the district reductions from the different funds of 515 and 520 of $450,000. So when we take a look at those reductions, we have common reductions to let us come to the understanding that all we have left to reduce is approximately $780,000. You can see the number there in the bottom right-hand corner. This is the area of concern. This is the area that we'll be talking about tonight and taking a look at how we should move forward. What's off the table? This is important because I know a lot of parents and family members and teachers want to know what is off the table. These are the areas that we looked at for reductions that nobody put on their list. These are the areas that are off the table. These are areas that we won't talk about reducing this year. The reduction of security guards at the high schools and the increase of parking fees, through the increase of parking fees of $28,000. That is off the table at this time. The reduction of the sub-allocations of $200,000 at all schools within the district. So we will still have the sub-allocation. We had part of that before, but it would still stay at the current rate, and that was a $200,000 savings that we could have incurred, but that is off the table. The conversion from all-day kindergarten to a half-day kindergarten program. We've seen other districts throughout the states go to a half-day K or a 4-pay program for all day, and most of those districts have reverted back because the student loss ratios and students leaving for charter schools or other sister districts next to the districts have not been fruitful, and they've lost more students than they've gained in the reduction. The next one that is important is the self-funding of athletics. That would have been a savings of $175,000. We feel that the increases in athletic fees this year were appropriate, and so the self-funded athletics program is off the table. There will be no self-funded athletics program for next year, off the table. The next one that we took a look at was a big number, $1.2 million, and that is moving to a K-6 model. And that would be a shortened day for the elementary schools and the elimination of music, art, and PE off the table. We will have music, art, and PE next year at all of our K-6 elementaries. That is not a consideration for next year's cuts. The next one we took a look at was cutting our attendance clerks. These are the people that bring in money. These are the people that make sure that our information is correct. And it was a $20,000 savings, a little more than that. That is off the table. We want to make sure that our data is correct. The next one that is off the table is the $180,000. This was a 2-year cut we were looking at for this year and the following year of $180,000. A lot of teachers and a lot of staff members have taken those classes. We felt we needed to value their time they spent to educate themselves, and at this time for next year, the stipend for teacher advancement is off the table. And the final one was the 5% cut in utility savings, and that is a very difficult one to measure. We don't know how hot or how cold next year may be. We will try to have a 5% savings. We will take a look at that. As a matter of fact, I believe that we will probably have some kind of contest across the schools to see that who can reduce their school savings, but at this time, because it's a very hard to measure and unpredictable number, that the 5% savings for utilities is off the table.
Dr. Thompson, can you go over cabinets?
Excuse me?
Can you go over the new cabinet recommendations
Yes.
for the remaining 700,000?
Okay, next we have the items of discussion.
We just did.
Yes. For the common records, I'm sorry, Mr. Wotovich. Okay. Next, we wanted to look at the items of discussion. These are the items that there was some discussion between the board members and the cabinet in areas that we are looking at to come up with the final 700 and change reductions across the district. The first one would be the reduction and reorganization of media specialists and the increase of media technicians. Okay. That was a recommendation by the cabinet for a reduction and a reorganization of $375,000. And that would look at the reduction of that would be the reduction of 6 media specialists and the continuation of 4 media specialists at the elementary schools. We would also look at adding media technicians to help provide that support at all other schools. So there would be a traveling media specialists at the elementary schools and media technicians on those days when the media specialist was not at the school. So it's only a half a reduction in media specialists, not the full reduction.
I just have one question in reference to this one. If we elected to maintain all the librarians in the elementary school, how much would that change this amount here that we have, the 375? Just curious.
It's 540,000 is the cost.
For all, it's not for all the elementary, because I think we're dealing with at the 375. It was dealing with the high school was included in that. If I
Yeah, the
remember.
547,000 actually includes all of the clerks and the media specialist at all the clerks K-12, the media specialist K-6, and the media specialist at the secondary level.
Okay.
So that's what that dollar equals. So to pull that out separately, I didn't divide it separately. Did you divide it separately, Ms. Sorensen?
I have a couple of different models. Mr. Wojtovich, would you ask the question again?
I was curious in reference to in reference to this number that we have here, if we kept all the librarians at the elementary school, at the K-6.
And just reduce the clerk?
Correct.
So the
Well,
clerk...
The savings for that would just be the 2 high school media specialists,
Okay.
because there are really 10 media specialists. There are 8 elementary media specialists and 2 high school media specialists. So if you take the 2 high school out of the 550,000 at 50,000 apiece, that's about 100,000.
And if you took the 8 clerks at the elementary and the 2 at the middle school, you're talking about basically about $90,000. So 190,000 would be the difference off of the 550. Quick math.
So with 375, that is keeping 4 media specialists.
And adding
At which
in-
elementaries?
They would be split. So every elementary would have a media specialist. They just have a part-time versus full-time, and opposite of them would be a media technician, which is what we use at the middle schools.
So to clarify, you said it would be $190,000 savings if we kept the media specialists at the K-6s and eliminated the 2 positions, correct?
Next, we have a recommendation from the cabinet to eliminate the K-8 lunch monitors. We do know that those cafeterias and those schools still need extra support and help, and that would be taken care of through volunteers from the community or the staff members at those schools signing up for a lunch duty or being assigned lunch duty at that time. I think that would be a training model that we would have to put together.
So to clarify, Dr. Thomason, when you say staff members, primarily teachers?
It could be other staff members also. We have aides in the schools. We have other district office staff in the schools, but primarily it would be teachers. Next, we have a reorganization and a reduction in gifted specialists. Once again, we're looking at a same comparable type of program that we have with the media specialists, a reduction of approximately half of the gifted specialists and a reorganization to take place for future years so we can build a program in the gifted area.
Dr. Thomason, offline, you in between the work study and the board meeting, you had told me that the gifted specialists are required, similar to SPED teachers. Is that correct?
Yes, gifted programs and gifted education is required by the state and federal government. Now that can look at a variety and a myriad of different ways, but we just have to provide some kind of services for those students.
And so in your opinion, what are we required to provide in terms of gifted resource specialists?
I would say minimally we would be required to take a look at what we can do to expand their learning opportunities, and that can be done through a district office staff to work with teachers. Minimally, that would be the minimal requirement, to have someone work with teachers to offer them expanded opportunities within the classroom.
So to clarify, it would look like a gifted resource specialist, one that would then go out and work with teachers to train them on best practices.
That
with
is not what we're
population.
recommending.
I understand. I'm just asking you. That would be the
Yes.
minimum. Okay.
Yes, sir. The next recommendation by the cabinet would be the elimination or the reduction in district-provided cell phones. We believe that we can reduce by $30,000. Currently, we pay $98,000, and we have 138 cell phones being used throughout the district at this time. That is not just cell phones, that also includes devices for internet, so it's 138 devices.
In the past, this was paid for a great deal by E-rate, but E-rate has changed its qualifications, and so they've slowly stopped paying for the cell phone. So about 18,000 of this is E-rate dollars, and the rest is 001. So there is a shift going on that is causing this to hit the 001 budget harder than it used to.
And the final reduction
Dr.
to...
Thomason,
Yes.
you said 138 cell phones district-wide. Well, mobile devices.
Yes, sir.
District-wide. So if we take the $98,000 expense that is divided by the 138, that's $710 per device. Something seems wrong there.
The information comes out differently. Some of those devices are lower cost devices, and some of them are the replacement of cell phones. When we have to replace an iPhone, that's a $465 expense, and so those expenses come out in different manners.
Are there phones, smartphones that could be purchased that maybe have a $1 cost? I mean, I see that all the time when I go to Sprint.
I would have to work with our IT department to find out if we can do that. I don't believe the district is set up on that kind of system, but we do have 3 different phone systems. We have the flip phones, which are very minimal cost, and we do have to the maximum phones that have the internet access and that have the downloading capabilities, and so we'd be looking at a reduction in those.
If I could add one piece, when I talked with Chuck Kelly about that, our head of IT, the other issue that comes up is that the old phones, because of the sophistication of the amount of data that is downloaded through the system, so through our calendaring system and through our voice systems, some of the old phones can't handle hooking up with Outlook. So there also is a generation that we can't use. And so when you go into the store and they give you the iPhone, whatever it is, 4 or whatever, and they're saying, okay, for $1 you can have it, then you can have it and not do anything other than receive calls. And that's okay if that's what we choose, but a lot of our administrators respond through email and texting as well as a phone. So we'd have to determine the actual use of the phone. So they're out there, but it's how we want them to use the phone. So if we want them to respond immediately to an email or to a text and stay connected to parents through that way, that's part of getting the device that's appropriate.
I would venture to guess, we can end it after this, but I would venture to guess that about 75% or more of smartphones on the market can get email. So.
Oh, okay, well, you know what, I'll just, thank you so much, and I'll let Chuck Kelly answer that for you. Because I brought him one that I got for $1 and said, I want to give up my school phone. Could you get me the school on here? And the answer was, no, it cannot handle it.
Dr. Thomason, just another question about what's the makeup of that 98,000. So it's paying for the device, but not access, so not minutes or data plans.
No, it is paying for everything. It's paying for the device. Once we have the phone, then we don't need to pay for the device again. Some phones last 2 years. Some phones last 3 years. We have phones that age out throughout the year, and so there are different times that we need to replace phones, and then you replace them at this time. We have replaced them depending on the level of service and then the level of communication that you need. Could be replaced by an iPhone 6, or they could be replaced by a simpler cell phone.
But is the district paying for the monthly plan?
Yes.
Okay.
I will also say that administrators put cell phones on their list. They would be happy not to have them. But we also will delay our response time.
Dr. Thomason, a quick question on that. Does that also include data for iPads, or is that data piece separate?
Those are some of the devices that we use to download data. So there are some members within the district that need to have data devices that are not cell phones. They're like the hotspots, the wireless internet services that you can download. So we do have several of those devices throughout the district also.
And I was just thinking when they were talking about the cell phones and with being able to get to email, that if there's somebody with a cell phone and an iPad, is there something that we can do to reduce that cost for, do we need to talk to them? Do we need the data? Do they need both devices to do the same thing?
I can think of 2 members within the district that do, but there may be others that have it that may not. That is something that we would be looking at. We'd be looking at everybody who has a data device and everyone that has a cell phone and taking a look at their needs. We can reduce the level of data needed. We can reduce the level of services needed. And so the 2 that I think of that are critical are the ones that need to be notified if a freezer or refrigerator unit goes down in the middle of the night, that have to be taken a look at, and then they would be able to use their data system to find out what the problem is and get the proper personnel out here to fix the issue.
And I think if the board can agree on a dollar amount, we'll let district staff decide what is appropriate use and what is a priority for technology and communication.
Thank you. So taking a look at those reductions, that is all of the cabinet and that was all the cabinets recommended reductions, and so we have that taken care of. We do have other reductions on the lists, as you can see.
Dr. Thomason, so does the cabinet reduction sum to the 780,000 needed?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
The cabinet reductions actually puts us in the black. $10,814. And that would be our recommendation for tonight if you guys so choose to vote on it.
I would just like the board to give it some thought. I was looking over this, and with the 190 that we were talking about to keep all the librarians in the elementary school, to affect all the elementary children in this school district, if for $190,000, if we look at the administrative stipend of $150, and also the additional furlough day of 46. Just food for thought. I want to have this discussion with my board members about this.
President Whitener.
Dr. Thomason, was there anything else in regards to your presentation?
If you would like, I can go over each of the individual board recommendations or a total of the board recommendations for each area.
Would the board like those?
We have them. I mean, it's
Okay.
whether the community wants them.
Okay.
So you can have them go through the gray one.
The column that's next to cabinet on the yellow, where you have like 3 out of 5 and 1 out of 5, can you go over that, please?
Okay, looking at the column in the blue, these were the recommendations we have from the board members. I didn't list them out each separately as you can continue across the board, but for the elimination of the media specialists with the increase in aides, we had 3 out of 5 board members recommend this reduction, but at different levels, anywhere from $170,000 to $547,000, which would be the full elimination. So we had different models there recommended by the board. The second one, the elimination of the assistant principals and move to a dean. We did have 1 board member recommend that as a full elimination of the $60,000. Next, we have the elimination of the K-8 lunch monitors. We had 3 out of the 5 board members recommend the reduction. We did have 1 recommend the elimination of the K-8 lunch monitors and keep the middle school monitors, and so that was a reduction of anywhere from $45,000 to $225,000. Next, we had the gifted reductions from the gifted specialists. We had recommendations from the board, 4 out of 5 board members. There was one board member who recommended no reduction in gifted, and we had others recommend reductions from $150,000 to $300,000, with the one board member recommending no reduction in gifted. Then we had the additional furlough day for 12-month employees only. We had 2 of the 5 board members having recommendations. One board member recommended 3 additional furlough days for the 12-month employees. That would include administrative staff, summer specialists that work for custodians, maintenance, operations areas, grounds, those staff, some of the district office staff that are classified, and so that would affect those employees without affecting the teachers or those other general school employees that work during the school year only. And then we had the recommendation of 2 of the 5 board members for expanding middle school and high school, and this can also be broken in half if the board so chooses to look at it, of the increasing of the walking area of the middle school from 1 mile to 1.5 miles, or the high school walking area from 1.5 to 2 miles. That can also be broken out. It's approximate savings of $65,000 for the high school and $35,000 for the middle school if we wanted to break those out separately.
Now, Governing Board, the process that was used for this was to bring in teams and lots of discussion. We had parent groups that talked about all-day kindergarten versus half-day kindergarten. We had teacher groups that talked about various pieces. And I want you to know that we met with the administrators, not only with the teachers, but we met with them alone. And in my past experience, in 20 years of being an administrator, and having an opportunity to meet with administrators and go through reductions when I was in Paradise Valley, sitting in the seats of a principal, there are aspects that, as you realize through a cut, that you need to put things forward. And they clearly accepted these furlough days, knowing that they would not get them back, although teachers will get their dollars back through 301. But we continue to hear this piece about administrative stipends. That is a significant reduction in the pay of administrators when you look at the whole picture. And so one class of individual would be putting forward a lot more in reductions than any other group. When you look at the overall reductions administratively, $1.45 million has been put forth by the administration. That means somebody else is picking up the jobs of those people who have been cut. We're doing without. To ask us to then give up stipends and pay for administrators only and take one class of individuals and ask them to have a significant reduction in pay will not be supported by this administration. You may decide that as a board, but it will not be this administration that puts that forward.
President Weiner.
Mr. Little.
I just would like to make a comment, particularly around the administrative stipend, I'd encourage the board to take an organizational perspective. You know, the school district is more than just an educational institution. It's also an employer for many people in our community. And it needs to be a good employer that attracts and retains top talent and strong leaders that make the classroom possible. And saving money without the perspective of outcomes is not serving the community in the long run. I know in organizations I've been in, an organization that I run now, if you can't attract good, talented people and keep them in your organization, they will go elsewhere. And once the brain drain starts, it's almost impossible to stop. So pushing a burden onto those that are in the leadership positions in the district, these are very talented, strong people that have helped take a district to number 1, which is a challenge. It's even a greater challenge to stay there. So I would encourage the board to consider, from an organizational development standpoint, that we, taking Dr. Birdwell's comments on not overburdening those that are in a leadership position that have already taken a considerable cut to the district office and other administrative areas, that we take the long view and consider that strong leaders in the school district help us stay at number one, help create an enriched learning environment. I'm saddened the state, so I'm kind of new to all of this. I'm really saddened the state is only funding basic education and not enriched education. You know, it's not, basic education is not preparing our kids for the world they will grow up to and be required to take on roles as adults. Basic education is not enough. We need more enriched learning, and Higley has done a wonderful job in a stringent budget environment, providing enriched activities for our kids and enriched learning environments, and that requires strong leadership to pull it together. So I would encourage the board to not consider the administrative stipend as a budget cut.
Thank you.
President
Are
Whitener.
there any comments, questions regarding the budget?
Yeah, Board Member Little, I appreciate your feedback. I respect it. I think that you take a unique perspective because you work in the healthcare industry, and so you bring that to the table. And so I appreciate that. I would say there are a couple of reminders that I would put out there. One is the fact that, and this is not a ding on the district office, but it is the reality of it. Approximately $500,000, $450,000 that was brought to the table as from the district office is really just a money move. And as we've heard tonight, that's a one-time money move. So it's when it runs out, and we still have to cut that $450K. Also, there are administrators at the site level that are being cut and contained within that $1 million that's left over from the district office reductions. Again, that's not a ding on the district office. That's just the reality of what it is. I think the $150,000 that is earmarked or is pegged for administrative stipends in the economy where we can't afford that, I think it's absolutely smart to look long range on that. However, when we're having to look at cutting 10 media specialists and we're having to look at eliminating K-8 lunch monitors, which I know that one seems easy. It's not. As the husband of a former teacher, public school teacher, I know for a fact how important that lunchtime is for teachers. They're running to the restroom, they're running to the copy room, they're cramming down lunch, and then they're going to get their kids. And so to take that away when we have $150,000 on the table that could help to offset that, I just think that's irresponsible.
Mr. Hoffman, as a former teacher myself who had 210 students, science teacher, grading labs and research reports, and a morning duty every day. I get it. But I also understand I could not have been supported and do my job if I did not have the strong instructional leadership. And when that instructional leadership was not there, that sure made my day even worse. So I will recommend to the board to support our instructional leaders and to go back and understand where we've been. Higley has achieved #1 rankings through the Department of Education by their mandates, by their rules, by their laws, in a decreasing budget time. So 6-year budget cuts, our kids have been able to achieve at a very high trajectory level, due in part to the strong instructional leadership that we have at our schools. No, do I appreciate that we're cutting lunch aids? No. But because we do have 2 instructional leaders, hopefully one of them will help take that on, and we get parents that can volunteer. Okay? I understand we can't even keep staff for lunch aids on some of our sites. Within a compromising situation. As we try to be if the word is equitable or every group is representative within these budget cuts. So when I look at the experiences that my children have been able to have as we've gone through budget cuts, as we've reduced other staff, and how important those assistant principals play, and how important our instructional leaders are. If you want to retain high quality, please give us your plan. Please tell me your plan. Please, if you want to retain high quality instructional leaders attract high quality teachers. As much as we want to not have teachers share any burden, but it is a very difficult situation. But please tell me how we attract high quality instructional leaders.
So quite frankly, I think that the argument is disingenuous.
Oh,
I do.
Sorry, I should have seen that word coming.
Well, I simply do, because we're right now reducing all of our other employees to the HSA level plan, but yet we're still giving a very small subset of our highest paid employees a multi-$1,000 stipend every year. That it can help to offset that, it can just be extra fund money, whatever it may be. And so I don't see that as burden sharing.
So
I don't see that as
saying
equitable.
is fund money, is that disingenuous?
I don't see that as equitable.
Well, first of all, let me just say that HSA is what everybody receives health insurance.
Correct.
Everybody gets it. The difference is you have a higher deductible, an even higher deductible with the silver and the gold plan, but everybody would receive the exact same health plan which we have today, which only has a $1,300
but only
deductible.
a small subset of administrators get a stipend that can be used to offset that.
Administrators, and this is an error that I believe that we have burdened, that we should have brought back to the board 3 years ago when the Obamacare came in. When that got removed and it was no longer family medical, every district in the state moved it to some type of stipend.
Sure, I understand.
And we should have called it what it really is, which is a pay for performance. And that would be more accurate. A teacher, $50,000 is the average teacher when you take benefits and our average pay. They get 10%. They get Prop 301 at $5,000 next year. If you took 10% of an administrative average salary, which is 88 with benefits, makes it about 95. They get about a $9,000 stipend. 9,300, I believe, is what it is. That's 10%. Each gets 10% of what their salary is in a pay for performance. So we can come back and visit that, but should they be reduced their 10% versus the teachers' 10%? The state law requires that teachers receive pay for performance. The state law requires that a superintendent receive pay for performance. The state law left out administrators. Why? I have no idea why they do what they do down there. Not sure I'll ever understand it. Reality is, they should have put it in there. So what districts did is they came back in their 01 and they put stipends in, and they left them there because they felt every group should have pay for performance so that you have highly performing schools. Our error was, we should have called it what it was 3 years ago when that shift occurred. Instead of having it in lieu of family medical, you may use it for. The reality is, it is their pay for performance.
But
we expect them to be A
It's
schools.
a simple stipend. It's not pay for performance, because even the superintendent, if you don't live up to your performance standards, we cannot give you all of that, and that's not how it's doled out.
And what we would
and
be
so right now, all we're giving is an additional cushion, an additional extra amount to those administrators.
And what I said to the board earlier today is we'll be bringing back benefits for your approval, and that benefits will be that will be a pay for performance that they earn by their school improvement plans. And I can tell you right now, they're all A schools. If it was up to me to award their pay for performance, they'd all get it. We're A schools.
Yeah.
You can dislike that all you want, but the reality is we have outstanding administrators, and I support their performance, and I believe they deserve that stipend. They've done a great job.
I think they're outstanding as well. The difference, though, is that I believe that they should be treated like other employees. They are already among our highest paid, rightfully so, but they are already among our highest paid. And so we should not be giving an extra stipend simply because, especially when we have millions of dollars this year and millions of dollars next year to cut.
It is an inherited tradition that this district has had for over 10 years.
And it's time that it stopped.
It's time to address what it really is, which is pay for performance.
Mr. Hoffman, you have to appreciate this, and I really like Dr. Birdwell's comment that this is really about a pay for performance, because the stipend part is a bit of a misnomer. Leadership in an executive position, the cabinet, need a tool to incentivize top leadership across the entire district. Pay for performance is one of those tools. It's a significant enough percent of these folks' salary to call it a cushion is disingenuous. It's not a cushion. This is a leadership tool that Dr. Birdwell and her cabinet can use to appropriately reward staff.
To clarify, Mr. Little, this is not part of their salary. This is not like the superintendent's pay for performance, where it's a piece of their salary. This is over and above. This is in addition to the salary amount that we approve.
Which is no different than other organizations.
The superintendents is in addition to their salary, their pay for performance, and during the evaluation, if the superintendent performs, they receive, in addition to their salary, pay for performance.
Not per statute, it's not. Per statute, it is a part of their salary.
And that would be
a portion of their salary must be.
And that would be
based on.
debatable, because 95% of the superintendents in the state of Arizona have it in addition to their salary, and I'd be happy to pull those stats for you.
I understand how most boards do it, but that's not how statute reads. So don't play word.
Maybe not the intent of what the statute, but how it's been interpreted is it's in addition, and boards across the state have supported that it is in addition to the salary.
Mr. Hoffman, I wanted to speak. As I reflect on the budget, as a board member, we have a unique role. We hear from parents, we hear from teachers, we hear from each other as board members, we hear from the taxpayer, we hear from people who do not have children in our schools, we hear from staff, and as a unique perspective, we hear it all. And to be quite frank, I hear, high school teachers painted on elementary teachers, and elementary teachers painted on high school teachers. Admin painting on teachers, teachers painting on admin, board members painting on admin. We see it all, and it's a unique perspective, and it's a unique opportunity to, if the word is to unite. We're all going in this budget together. It should not be punitive towards one group of people over another. And first and foremost, our students. Step back and look at what the community desires is high expectations and high quality. And I want that for my students. I want that for my kids. So when you say, well, it's time we got to stop, and we still have to make this cut, and we still have to make this cut, you don't have the same expectations that I do. You do not have the same desires that I do for my kids. And I understand that. I have soon to be 3 children in the gifted program. Watch out for that kindergartner. He may give Zane a run for his money. But I'm not here dying on the sword to please fund my gifted program. It's not my gifted program. It impacts my students too, just as much as a librarian does. But I'm not asking for an admin cut to fund the gifted. I'm not asking for an admin cut to fund another area. It's a representative budget that we're in this all united together. And that's my perspective as the budget of how can we maintain high quality, represent and meet the needs of children as much as we can, and not be punitive over one class or group over another. That is my perspective as board member Whitener. But I do value, and this board needs to come and figure out through the community, what do we value? What are our expectations? Do we have high expectations? And some of those high expectations are not met by the budget that has been released or handed to us by our state legislature. Now, you agree with that. You've made that quite clear that you agree with the governor's cuts. I do not. I do not agree with those cuts. But I try to be representative of all the information, all the people who have communicated with that. My expectations are not the same as the legislature's expectations, and I don't think anyone in this room, does anyone in this room have the expectations that our governor does right now?
Are you speaking to the crowd?
It's not out of line, Mr. Hoffman. You speak to the crowd all the time. I had posted an update on my social media page, and I got over 4,000 views. 4,000 and hundreds of comments through multiple pages. In my perspective, I feel I have a good representation of this community's values and expectations. If you'd like to be more engaged with the community, we need to be able to do that. And if we're not hearing those things, these are the things that Board Member Whitener is hearing as I've engaged myself in the community and immersed myself in the budget.
President Whitener, if I can just clarify one piece real quick, something you got wrong. This is not, my perspective is that this is not punitive. This is about our job is to support the classroom. Our teachers have been asked for a decade or more to continually do more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And I don't believe it's fair that we take away lunch monitors and ask them to cover that void. I don't believe it's fair that we put librarians who are teachers on the chopping block.
But last year you wanted to cut them.
Last year I brought it up as an idea.
But last year you wanted to cut them.
As an idea.
Okay.
Yes. I never once said we should cut them. I said we need to look at it. Because we do have to put all things on the table, and I get that. But at the end of the day, it's our job to protect the classrooms.
Correct.
It's our job to support our teachers, and it's our job to support our students.
And I just explained my perspective isn't strong instructional leaders protect those classrooms.
Not more than the teachers themselves.
And we are not cutting teachers, Mr. Hoffman.
You're just taking more resources away from them, is what you
The
think.
cabinet met with all groups, and we brought you what we believe to be a very balanced sharing among various work groups. I know that you heard from teachers. I know that people sent you emails. I will tell you that I don't believe any administrator that works in this district bypassed the superintendent and emailed you directly or called you directly or sent you the need of how important an assistant principal is or how important their job is or how important it is to keep that extra 10%, because they respect the chain of command. And they would not do that because it would not be professional for them to begin to load your emails up with emails from the administration. They respect the process. They met as a team. They set forth as a team some pieces for this cabinet to represent them on. And when I say that the stipends I am not putting forward, I am representing all of the administrators in this district, because we met with them. And they shared how significant a 10% reduction in their pay would be, because they do believe it's part of their pay, Mr. Hoffman. It's been there for over 10 years. It's become part of what they depend on. It is what attracts the Dr. Wongs, Miss Ibarra, those folks with all of that experience that make us who we are, that give us our A-plus schools. It's the stipend that keeps the Court Monroes here, the Dr. Wattawas, the folks that we depend on. We have the finest group of administrators in this state. And I will tell you that I met with them and I'm proud of them.
President Whitner, is it President Whitner? Is it okay, perhaps, on this budget, on the things that we're having questions on, if we could take one at a time and see what the consensus is at that one, then go down to the next one, so we can get through this evening? I mean, unless you have some other ideas.
I guess if I could go specifically and say, what do board members not support cabinet's recommendation on the final budget? So what on the cabinet recommendation do you not support?
Well, that would be all of our areas of discussion.
Not necessarily, because one person may have brought it up, but maybe after hearing discussion tonight, maybe they're fine with cabinet recommendation. Okay.
President Whitener,
Mr. Little.
what's the opportunity to allow some leeway for the cabinet to make adjustments? So, for example, it's tough to cut all the KA lunch monitors, but what if we could offset that a bit with expanding the bus range, right? So there's some play here maybe that the cabinet could take. Further investigation in some of these budget cuts may reveal, you know what, it's probably a bad idea to cut all the lunch aids. Maybe we could expand the bus range. Is there a way for us to approve a budget that gives them some freedom to make those decisions operationally?
Okay. So, how about, it's with that situation, so that brings up two different topics. So I don't know if we want to go line by line or each board member. What would we prefer?
What if we go line by line? What, Ms. Reese?
Sure.
Okay. And you are going line by line on proposed cuts or?
Areas of discussion, right?
Okay. So on proposed cuts, the ones that we did not have a common piece on.
Yes.
Okay. So does that mean we're starting with
Is that scrolled all the way to the top?
the cell phones? So we're starting at cell phones?
There we go.
Oh, I have a different format here. Okay.
She's starting with librarians.
So where are we starting?
Okay, librarians.
President Whitener,
Mr. Hoffman.
I am not okay eliminating 10 media specialists. We're supposed to be just going through it and giving our opinions on
On
what we
cabinet,
asked.
Mr. Hoffman, the proposal is maintaining 4 librarian specialists.
I am not okay with cutting media specialists.
Okay, you said 10.
Going off the list on the left. 4. I'm not okay with cutting media specialists. How's that?
Okay.
President Whitener,
Mr. Little?
that's a tough one, and I think the cabinet has proposed a really good compromise on media specialists. 4 media specialists for the elementary, split between all 8. Other districts have cut their media specialists. It's unfortunate. It's a tough decision. It's such a large amount to not address this one. Without the media specialists cuts, you couldn't even make it up with some of the other, if you included almost all the other ones.
And the cabinet proposal allows for the maintenance of gifted as well. I think those two are hand in hand, I would assume. Mr.
Right,
Keith?
and eliminating the gifted specialist is a tough one. I think the proposal there is a good one to compromise and allow some media specialists where they're needed the most and gifted specialists where they're needed the most.
Ms. Reese?
I also disagree with even sharing media specialists. They play a huge part in our schools. They can, in the instance, if they need to fill in a classroom, yes, it might not be great that a grade or a class didn't get to go to their library special with the media specialist, but they're there, they can fill in a different area. I know that there were some different things proposed. I know that I asked about reducing them to somewhat of a part-time schedule, which would have minimum impact on when kids are there, which would be somewhat of a cost savings, but at least they're still there on campus.
So how is the part-time different than?
Because they're there every day when the kids are.
Okay, well, that is, there are 2 ways to do that. You take and give them a half a job, and then they're there every day, or you do a split pairing with the other side. And so, what you're talking about is still a reduction, and that's what this is. This is a half reduction of the current model, paired back up with a media technician to assist them. So there's always an adult present.
Dr. Birdwell, can I get some clarification on that? Because it's a half reduction, but it's really only a half reduction at the elementary level, because it's actually the reduction of 6 teachers.
Yeah, it's a secondary move into the middle school model of using a media technician. At the elementary, it's taking your 8, reducing to 4, but adding in 4 media specialists, media technicians like we use at the middle school, so that there are still 8 bodies, but it's a savings. So, and no clerks. So they would have to use parent volunteers to help some of the other duties. So it is a reducing of partial. I don't care if you say, well, you're just going to all stay there half-time and the other half of the day is going to be the media specialist. But the reality is the number of FTE is the same. It's just a different person at a different cost. One is certified and one is not. And so there's a half of a cost there. We have media specialists that are $65,000 a year. And a media technician in this district right now is $23,000. There's a significant cost difference in that personnel.
But at the K-6 model, if we did, for instance, a 9 to 2:30, the children arrive at 8. They wouldn't necessarily go to the library between 8 and 9. They go at 3, so there's 2:30 to 3. There's less of a time frame that they wouldn't be there.
So you would reduce the certified staff to a 0.6 contract?
For cost savings, that we have them on site.
So what we would recommend is 4 people to keep four full-time jobs, and you would say take all 8 and give them a 0.6 contract. So they would all lose in that case. Whereas if they had a full-time contract split between schools, the others that don't would have full-time teaching jobs, and no one would lose salary. With a 0.6, someone's going to lose salary. A 0.4 of their salary is going to be gone. So we're saying keep 4 full-time so they have a full-time job, put 4 in the classroom and hire the techs to help them. So I mean, I hear what you're saying, but from an FTE perspective, I wouldn't take that job, but I mean, we can do it, whatever the board recommends. We'll do a 0.6. Ms. Sorensen might have some thoughts on that, but.
Well, I have the figures that would take them to 29 hours a week. So that's about 5.8 hours a day. So what that does, though, is make them not benefits eligible anymore. So they lose the benefits, which for most of our employees, that's a huge draw once they become benefits eligible. It's about $170,000 savings to take current full-time 1.0 8-hour-a-day media center specialists and move them to it's a 0.725 FTE at 5.8 hours a day. It's about $170,000, but I just want to reiterate the loss in benefits for all of those individuals. I guess in addition, I might just note at this time that so we have 8 elementary media center specialists currently. We have received and already brought to the board some time ago the resignations for 2 of those media center specialists. So that leaves us with 6. We have an additional 2 of those media center specialists who participated in the voluntary transfer process back at the end of January, 1st of February, and have accepted regular classroom positions at their school sites. We gave them an option at the time when we were looking at making sure that they had a position to go into should you decide to cut that position this evening. We did give them an option that if you didn't cut them this evening in that position, they could go back in to that. So those 2 individuals would have to make a decision if they want to remain in that classroom position or go back into the media center position. But as it stands right now, of the 8, we really have 4 that we would need to place.
And that information's helpful, and I mean, understanding we saw this for the first time on Thursday, and at 5 o'clock we saw the revised ones. So we're not going off information we've had for weeks.
And please understand, every day somebody's sending us an idea. So I want you to know that we heard from 4 board members today with new ideas too. So we're trying to give you the latest and greatest update constantly. So it is on the forefront of everybody's mind.
President Whitner,
Mr. Ratovich.
I appreciate my reference to I would prefer that we keep all 8 of the elementary librarians in the schools. But I am comfortable with the plan that the cabinet has brought forward here as well.
President Whitner.
Mr. Little.
Yeah, in light of Ms. Sorensen's new information, the district gets to benefit from attrition. So, meaning a few media specialists have decided to leave, others have given an opportunity to move into a different position. So there's 4 remaining of the total that need a position, and we still want media specialists. So I think what the district has proposed is a perfect solution. We get to benefit from attrition. We're not actually, no one's losing a job. They're moving into a different position, and we get to keep 4 media specialists.
Okay. Eliminate elementary assistant principals or move to deans. Any discussion? Okay, eliminate KA lunch monitors. Any more discussion to that?
President Whitener?
Ms. Reese?
I think that we need to look at keeping minimally the K-6 lunch monitors.
I will just add the perspective that this was a recommended cut through. Can I just be clear? I don't have last week's sheet. Was it all the groups from last week's sheet?
It was cabinet and admin.
Cabinet and admin. Yeah. As I look at that piece, I understand obviously the logistics of that. But again, my perspective is meeting each student's needs. You know, when I look at lunch aids versus funding gifted, or lunch aids versus teacher salary advancement, or I would also hope that as we do assume and keep the role of assistant principals, that they would, as administrators and with working with their principals, address how they can manage that. If that was put forward by admin, Dr. Bertle, I assume that conversation took place with the lunch aides. Logistically, if there's you know, I don't know if you can do a trial period or whatnot, but if there's multiple grades, there's multiple teachers, that it's not they're doing lunch duty every single day. But then again, this is a budget of compromises. I could easily say, do you want to fund librarians? Do we want to eliminate all of librarians and put that money towards lunch aids? Any discussion, board members, on lunch aids?
No, I'm comfortable with the cabinet's recommendation.
I think it's a student issue. We have a lot of little ones in the lunchroom at one time. I think it's a teacher issue. Also, if we are eliminating some of those librarians, I know we were talking about we would have to, excuse me, address the prep issue at another time. This, again, would take away some of the prep issue, or this would add to that prep issue. It takes away some of their prep time, takes some away just their time to get away. So I think we have a teacher issue. I think we have a student issue with this one. There's a lot of little ones going to lunch. We have to get them through in a short amount of time. We have 7 grades we have to get through in and out, and they need help.
If it's, I mean, ideally I would assume we would be having parent volunteers in there. And that would be on each site's level to ensure those volunteers are there, or else it might be our APs. You know, and if that's, they need to have that discussion on their site level and how they want to address that, would be my perspective, that they need to have that conversation and how they address that, whether they ask each teacher to have a parent volunteer at lunch, or if they do it on the site level, and that's something that the administrators arrange for themselves, or if one day's parents, one day's teacher, one day's AP. I am comfortable enough that if admin put that forward, that they would be able to handle that and not necessarily, I don't think the idea is to have teachers do that 100% of the time. I think our administrators respect our teachers in that aspect, that they would first and foremost try a different avenue besides just using teachers.
Dr. Thomason, how many lunch monitors do we have?
President Whitener, Mrs. Reese, I can give you some information on that, and might just provide, without advocating one way or the other, just a little bit of sort of HR realism to this particular position. So each of the elementary schools has 4 lunch monitors. They work 2.5 hours a day. The middle schools have 6 of them. They work just a little bit longer than that, 2 3/4 hours a day, or maybe even 3 hours a day during that lunch period. We have had some of these positions that have been vacant the entire school year. They have been posted on the school marquees. We post them on the district marquees. We advertise consistently for these positions. The schools are already on a regular basis figuring out a way to cover every single day. I know I have worked extensively with Cooley Middle School on their opening. So of the 6 positions that they have available on any given day, the entire school year, they have only had fully staffed about 2 or 3 of those. So they are regularly finding the way to cover. Administrators are out there. Teachers are taking their turns doing duty. And I think because of the irregular ability to fill these positions, if the schools just simply knew that they didn't have these positions available, there would be a regular person out there every single day. That rotating duty schedule would be in place, and the teachers would know exactly which day, which week they would be out there to cover, and it wouldn't be a scramble every single day to figure out which of the lunch monitors is not going to show today, and have them covering and flying by the seat of their pants and doing it.
Okay, I want to finish the discussion on lunch aids and then grab those community members who wish to speak, as I see it is getting late. Sorry. Any other discussion on lunch aids? Okay, I do have some forms up here. I will go ahead and just call the name that I have in order. Michelle Potter.
So much for my speech. However, I'm going to go with it. I have no doubt what I'm going to say tonight is not going to sit well with many of you. I'm not only a mom, I'm an employee. I'm a front office at Santan Elementary. I know what it means to be me time. It took me many, many years to realize I need me time. These teachers need their, how can I be a better teacher time? They need that full lunch. They need that full prep. They need it. I drive by this campus all the time. I live in the neighborhood. I can't tell you how many times I see teachers there, our assistant principal there, working on weekends, late in the evenings, early in the mornings, on breaks, giving it all to make sure that we are all doing the best that we can for the students that we have. I myself get to work 15 to 30 minutes early so I can help teachers that have tasks that need to be done, because they don't have the parent volunteers. Not every campus has parent volunteers. I stay late to help them. I do this because I want to do this, because they need it, because they can't get the help. And to say that we can get a lunch aide to come in and volunteer, what guidelines are going to be set in place for these parents? That's a whole new ball wax. Currently at our school, parents aren't even allowed on the playground at lunchtime, and now we're going to ask them, okay, can you come and volunteer and supervise 120 kids? And don't forget, you got to not take favorites, you got to help them all, you got to stay on the ball, you got to be able to relate to the office staff who is eating, who isn't eating, who you think there might be some issues with. There's a whole lot that comes into play. And I know this is going to be my fate, but I have to say it. These stipends, it sickens me. I'm sorry. I don't have the education you have, Dr. Birdwell, but it sickens me. When I work 80 hours as hard as I do, and I take home $62 for an 80-hour check because of my benefits. No, I don't have the education that a fraction of you do in here. But to see that you're willing to put the full stipend ahead of library, lunch aids, that is gross. To say that cell phones are more important, 138 of them, that is wrong. Our kids deserve it more. I love Higley. I don't want to work someplace else. But after tonight, I don't know. Maybe I will be asked to go someplace else. But Higley has taught me, and Dr. Birdwell has said it in many of her speeches on the rallies. Stick with us. Stick with us. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. Why can't we forgive the stipend for just 1 year? Can't they cut it back by 50%? There has got to be leeway because the administrators are not sending the message to the community, to the parents, much less to their staff. They wouldn't have that A+ rating if it wasn't for those teachers. They're giving it their 210%. Thank you.
Melanie Schneider.
President Whitener, Governing Board, and Cabinet. I'm speaking to you tonight not only as a concerned parent of 3 boys in the Higley schools, but also as a concerned teacher at Centennial Elementary. I've been employed at Centennial for the past 5 years, and I've always believed, as Dr. Birdwell said, that it's great to be Higley. However, with these budget cuts that stand in front of us tonight and for the next 2 school years, it saddens me to think that our students, including my own children, will be doing without. They'll possibly be doing without classes that make them well-rounded individuals and classes and programs that spotlight their talents. Now, as a teacher strictly, not as a mom, I want to speak to you about my fear for this district and for my students. My fear is that these budget cuts will not only take away classes that are crucial in building their foundation, but that it will become our new normal. Once these classes and programs are gone, we all know it's very difficult to get them back. As teachers, we understand that unfortunately there must be cuts and that there will be sacrifices to make over the next couple of years. But many of these sacrifices come with faces and names, and they become part of our family. They're not just jobs that are being cut. They're colleagues that we've come to love and build friendships with. They're our family. Please do not let what happens tonight or over the next 2 years become the new normal for Higley. When these budget cuts are over, please bring the programs and the people back to our schools and do what's truly best for our students. See, these aren't just my students in my classroom for the year. They're not just kids on my class list. Over the course of the school year, they become part of my heart and part of my family. And I urge you to do what's best for our students in Higley, not only today or the next year, but for the years to come. Now, as a mom, I just want to speak to you, and I know this is not on the chopping block this year, but I know that it soon could be. But I want to speak to you very quickly about self-funded athletics. Many of the students in our district will be turned away from athletics if the costs are doubled. So I know right now my boys play baseball. They've played baseball in Higley schools for the last 5 years. Typically our rate is about $150. If it raises to $300, I couldn't put my boys in baseball. They couldn't do what they truly love. So doubling the cost of athletic fees will only turn families to other school districts around us who aren't charging these fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michelle Anderson.
evening, Governing Board, staff, and community. I'd like to recognize how the environment of the April 2nd special meeting, how it was professional and collaborative. I felt like 5 people brought forward their individual principles and came together for a purpose. Thank you. For 5 years now, I've witnessed the Governing Board as being dysfunctional on 2 extreme ends, unduly unified and deliberately diverged. The changing climate on April 2nd was very refreshing. Soon you'll be determining the future of students, staff, and the quality of this community as a group of individuals. I need you all to realize what we have been witnessing and the potential you have. Lately, there has been some allowed personal criticism at Governing Board meetings from various people. I believe a humble leader can learn from petty and malicious criticism. Leaders will always face opposition, but can you face resistance without taking offense? Are you capable of reconciling with opponents so that there is peace where hostility has been created? J. Oswald Sanders states, "A leader who loses control under adversity forfeits respect and influence. A leader must be calm in crisis and resilient in disappointment." I've noticed a tactic being used that is enabling leaders to seem as though they are maintaining composure amidst adversity. The tactic is to characterize yourself as a victim and delicately coerce friends to lose control for you. Simple yet very effective amongst dysfunction. We need genuine leaders that can use the best ideas of others to make decisions. If you're going to cut staff, I recommend you promptly work with the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce, universities, retirement communities, and churches to help organize, manage, and provide volunteers. I'm out there at the crosswalk with my sexy sling on, and I was hoping that would, motivate people to come take my spot and volunteer, and it hasn't done anything. So I'm going to continue on because I believe as a parent it's my duty to support this school, and I give up my time and my money for this district. I just bought myself some time, so I'll talk fast. If you're going to cut programs, we may see a decline in enrollment. Find a way to share programs and services with other educational institutions. It is better to lose some funding per student instead of all of it. If you still think you need to build and staff the school and the bridges, even though at the 100-day enrollment mark, Power Ranch has 714 and Coronado 644 students with a capacity of over 1,100 at each site, then reach out to East Valley Engineering for Kids, the Town of Gilbert Park and Recs Department, Grand Canyon University, see if they would like to rent space. Also, you and staff need to maintain relationships with parents and students. Higley High enrollment was down 86 students in October. Graduation was not the cause because the incoming 9th graders were larger than the exiting 12th graders. Where did they go? What is going on there? Please find out on your own. And I have a gut feeling that an override will be on a ballot soon. I have supported every override except one in which I personally witnessed taxpayer money being misused in Higley. Friends and family of friends at the administrative level were given leniencies and exceptions that teachers were not. I stood here at this podium and begged the board to hear me. I was publicly called a liar and made a villain.
Thank you.
Relationships and trust need to be restored.
Mrs. Anderson, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Jill Wilson.
I did not prepare a speech. I came here today, as I have for the last 3 board meetings, to listen to you guys discuss what we would be cutting. Today, hearing that my daughter will be directly affected if you cut aides in the lunchroom because she does have allergies, as 8% of kids do. And if a teacher is rushing at the end of their shift to clean the lunchroom and forgets to wipe up the spilled milk, and my daughter sits down, she will break out. My daughter could end up in hospital. That directly affects me. I'm asking you guys to reconsider that cut, to make sure there's at least one trained aide there and able to wipe up the spilt milk and anything else that will affect a child. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivia Sanchez.
Good evening, President Whitener, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell, Dr. Thomason, and cabinet members. I apologize, I'm incredibly nervous. I have been a teacher in Higley for the past 10 years. I have seen the district go through many budget cuts. I understand that making budget decisions is not easy. I would like to encourage the board to think about the cuts that are being made. Are the decisions you are making in the best interest of the Higley community? Is taking media specialists or cutting media specialists out of the schools, the individuals who teach our students technology standards, instill an even greater love of reading, research skills, help the classroom teachers by enriching the Arizona standard, college and career ready standards that we are already teaching the classroom, the best decision for the kids? Is cutting lunch aids in the best interest of the kids? These individuals do more than just watch kids eat. They are there to assist with opening wrappers and containers, ensuring kids are behaving safely in the cafeteria, keeping an eye on allergy and medically sensitive students. It is quite possible that if we don't have enough volunteers, it will fall on the teachers. As elementary teachers, we have before and after school duties. This is another duty that will be on us. Is this a good cut? Are there more areas that can be cut that don't impact the K-6 environment and our students more than they already have over the past few years of cuts? If caps need to be put on health insurance, is that going to be put in place to all district employees? Is it possible to do a stipend for cell phones instead of buying them? While many decisions have probably been decided on, I would like to encourage the district to begin looking at options outside of the box we have been looking in. Our kids deserve everything we can offer to ensure that they will be successful. Our employees deserve the best of a horrible situation. We didn't get to #1 district by not giving our best. We can start planning for the future starting now. When you are voting tonight, please ask yourself, am I making a decision that is in the best possible situation for all individuals impacted? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Milton Bug. But Milton.
You can almost hear everyone say, uh-oh. Okay, this is my first opportunity to come to this event, and it was very spirited. Doctor, board. So I am inspired by everyone's passion and how you debate your positions and how committed you are to your beliefs. I think that's in the benefit to us all. A couple questions. The media specialist, at best, sound like that's a part-time position. Is that correct? Is that a full-time position? I heard 4 and 4. Full-time position. Have we considered, it sounds like there's a lot of problems facing the community. Have we considered maybe leveraging some of the ideas that have also been brought forward, maybe either going to the university where ASU East is right up the street with using interns from the university, or maybe students as the seniors that are in high school, using them as interns at some of the locations as potential options. So that was one idea I had. And then secondly, with respect to the gifted, there was some language inspecting or inquiring about what was required or what was the minimum necessary to maintain the gifted status. And to receive the A+ and the excelling, minimum standards, reaching for the minimums doesn't seem to be consistent with that language, doesn't seem to be consistent with that. And I heard someone talk about trajectory. And when it comes to budget cuts, I'm very familiar with this because at that time everyone gets so focused on the raindrop that's about to hit the windshield versus looking ahead and what it is we want to do. So that trajectory thing and who do we want to be as an organization that's Higley Unified for all of our students is something that hopefully will be paramount and central to all of your decisions. With respect to bus washing, purchase services. So I'll call bus washing. That sounded to me like purchase services. There might be an opportunity at the high school level to employ some of the students to do some of that kind of stuff and teach them to learn to earn. And maybe that becomes a part-time job for some high school students that would otherwise be lost if they didn't play sports or do something else after school. If they can't catch the bus home, where are they going to be? And I think that question, the cost of that question should weigh heavily on everyone in this room, because a lot of these kids need somewhere to go and need something to do. And without somewhere to go and without something to do, bad things happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more requests to speak? No? Okay. All right. We'll have a short 5-minute bathroom recess. Sorry, I thought we were all here. Okay, another public comment, Mr. Alibrandi.
President Whitener, board, members of the community, thank you for extending this time just a little bit. Just a couple of quick notes. First of all, I do appreciate the fact that the cabinet and the board seems to be supporting keeping the specials. That is important, and also keeping the APs. My wife is an employee. She's a receptionist at one of the elementary schools. I see when I visit her how key that is, so thank you very much. One thing I would appreciate too is that Mrs. Sorensen's HR reality is actually a pretty good thing. I know from personal experience at HTA, having spoken to the principal, having visited there, having volunteered there, that although not in a lunch aid capacity, these jobs and the crossing jobs are rarely filled. I mean, you're only getting paid $8 an hour, and if you don't have that stability, at least with a set schedule, save the $225,000, get the teachers on a rotation. If you do volunteers, that's great, although I agree when everyone laughed, I don't think we're going to get serious volunteers, but at least the teachers get stability. Right now, these aides are getting no respect because they have no relationship with the kids. At least the teachers would have that relationship, know the kids by name, and there's a little bit more discipline to be enforced. Just one man's opinion. As far as the stipends are concerned, I bring this from a business perspective. I don't see it as a bonus program, although I do appreciate the fact if you're talking about trying to make it a pay for performance, that's a good adaptation. Folks, when you're getting a civilian salary in a civilian company or an outside company, if you're getting a car allowance of X hundred a month or whatever, it's all taxable salary. So it's really what you take home at the end of the day. Whether my company called it a car allowance or gave it to me as the same amount in salary of whatever that was a year, the problem is that by trying to think that stipends are a discrete number, we're forgetting the issue that it's the total compensation package for administrators. Now, if you believe that whatever their base is plus this 10% is too much to begin with, well, then let's have that conversation. But to try to come back after this fact, we have to remember the following, that they're not going to get backfilled for the furlough days. So at least we've done a really good job with the teachers, and I appreciate you supporting this so far, is that with the $500 stipend of the 301, it's going to backfill the furlough loss for the teachers. You're protecting lane advancement. The teachers are being protected. Just a rough number, and I may be off, is that it looks like the furlough for an admin is going to cost, at the high end, $600 to $800 from their annual salary. At the high end. Now, I'm not talking about, if we talk about the maintenance worker, it's going to hurt them even more. It's a disproportionate cut for those folks. But the higher end folks are still getting a cut. And possible cell phone loss as well. But I do understand that $600 to $800 when somebody's making $80,000 to $90,000, that sounds like a lot of money. But folks, I think they've earned it. And if they haven't, then they need to go away and need to be replaced. So either we have quality people and we're going to pay quality salaries, or we don't have quality people and we don't pay them quality salaries. Well, you have to pay quality anyway. A 10% hit's a 10% hit, and if it moves to pay for performance, at least that makes them more accountable. Thank you all very much.
Dr. Birdwell, I would like to suggest and amend that we fund one certified lunch aide who is trained in allergies and specifically those health reasons.
Okay, we'll calculate that out.
Okay, can we have the chart back up with the blue line? Thank you. Okay. We are gifted specialists. Any conversation, communication with that? I believe there was a very thought out conversation compromise with that area, as we do see at least 2 board members supported entire cut and 2 board members supported half of that. Any other discussion on gifted?
President Whitener.
Mrs. Reese.
Looking at the cuts for gifted, it looks like what the cabinet's recommending is $150,000, so cutting it in half. I do look at these different than with the media specialists and the librarians. I know you were talking about if they go hand in hand. But with the cabinet recommendation of $150,000, I wanted to look at the expansion of the bus area. That shows that there would be a $100,000 reduction, that if we moved that piece to the gifted area, we would only have to reduce it by $50,000 based on what their recommendation is from cabinet.
President Whitener.
Mr. Hoffman.
So Board Member Reese, with regards to that, I think having the gifted specialists is a very nice thing to have, but they serve a very, very small percentage of our population. I mean, of the student body, it's probably just a few percent. And so, I mean, if we're going to take the $100,000, I personally think there's 2 much better uses of that money. That's just my opinion. But
Mr. Hoffman, what percent does special ed serve? Is it a smaller percent? You just asked of the federal mandate that we test and we track and we meet services for gifted students.
okay, we do have to provide gifted services. However, it is not mandated to the same level as SPED. And you're well aware of that. You're just trying to make me look like an idiot. So I appreciate that. So they have to we have to provide some level of gifted. That does not necessarily mean this level. My point is not against cutting the $150,000 that the cabinet recommends. My point is that if we're going to add in the bus expansion, that there are better places to use it.
Mm.
If I might note something about the busing, since you brought that up. If you did choose to expand the range of the bus, we would bring that back at another board meeting for a separate board agenda item. It certainly could go on a recommendation, but then there is a policy tied to the range. So for instance, if the secondary went from 1.5 to 2 miles range, we would want to put that up there, explain the cost savings. And Josh has run all the data on this. It's about a $57,000 savings if you still did the hazard places. If you had them walk across the railroad tracks, you could save about $81,000. But the reality is you have a policy tied to it. So it would need to come back, and you would have to have a suspension of the policy or an adjustment to the policy for 1 year or however many years you want to put that in place. So it's, yes, discuss it. Yes, you can put it on there, but then it still has to come back for an official board approval of change, okay? Okay.
Mrs. Reese, I am comfortable with the cabinet recommendation. I do have concerns with expanding the bus. Just concerns with making sure kids are at school on time. I worry about the high school students with that being that far.
Well, on Thursday night, Mr. Crosby said there was a minimal impact on students by expanding that. I mean, there is an impact, but the biggest concern was crossing the railroad tracks, especially with Williamsfield. And I'm sorry if you drive down Higley, they're going to Circle K, you know. I mean, they cross those railroad tracks all the time, going to Circle K. They're high school students, so that is why I'm not as concerned with expanding that. And if we want to look at it, you know, do we want to look at expanding high school, not middle school? Or they did say they have that broken out a little bit, but there is an opportunity to save some money there.
I could entertain high school.
Yeah, so high school savings without any restrictions, so not worried about them walking across a road, because they do, and so does one next door. It's an $81,612 savings for the secondary only, not middle schools, and I wouldn't recommend middle school, but the secondary probably, because the kids are older, they're more responsible. Well, we hope they're more responsible.
Well, and I think for our middle schools, just based on where they're located and the kids going, I don't know how many kids that would impact. So obviously, if out of the initial $100,000 figure we were given, if 81 of it's coming from the high school, then we see where that impact is. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
President Whitener.
Mr. Little.
I just wanted to kind of add my thoughts on the gifted specialist and the gifted program in general. And I think I appreciate some of the board members and the cabinet's view on the gifted specialists. These gifted kids, it's not like they're smart and they're getting extra. They really have a need, just like special education does. You know, they take a certain test and perform at a certain level, and that tends to be the focus, but they really have they really need a slightly different learning environment to do well, and they do not do well in an alternate learning environment that's more traditional than getting something that's more tailored to their learning style. So, you know, I don't know where the balance is of having a complete gifted program that serves the needs of these kids while losing some of the specialists. And, you know, a lot of parents in this district are here because of the gifted program. Because they know if you have a gifted child, it's a blessing and a curse. These children can be very challenging, and they may be not appropriate for a traditional classroom. They may be disruptive to the other kids. So I think it's important to make sure that we support the gifted program. It's attracting parents in the community. It really serves a need for many of the students in the district. But I think, you know, nothing's off the table in terms of you know, looking at all the areas. Some things are critical services that we have to look at. So if we can still provide what we need for the gifted kids and lose some of the specialists, then I think I can support that.
Dr. Thomason, can you, for clarification, it's my understanding the gifted specialists are the ones that go and work with kids in the traditional classroom. It's not impacting our self-contained gifted. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So, Mr. Little, for those that do need that different environment, not the traditional classroom, this is not affecting that. This is only the ones who are working, and I don't mean only disrespectfully, please, that work with the individual students that are in a traditional classroom that did not meet the qualifications or chose not to go to a self-contained gifted program.
So they're providing the pull-out service that it's known as.
Yes.
I don't believe it would be exclusively a pull-out service. Some of it is a drop-in service. Some of it is working with a mentor-teacher service. So that model could look several different ways depending on the needs of the student, needs of the school.
Right. So protecting our self-contained gifted programs is absolutely there. That's important. And this is like they said, you know, where they're coming in the classroom and working with a few students. And even for some of the students, a lot of the grade levels at the elementary, they will divide their classes for reading levels, so that way those who do better in reading are with kids that do better in reading. Those who need a little more help are with a little more help. So without the gifted specialist per se, a lot of the elementary school teachers do some of that as well. They try and challenge the ones that need challenging in a different manner that may not require an actual gifted specialist. So in my initial proposal that I sent, I was okay with reducing the gifted specialist as it was initially introduced, where it did keep somebody on staff to work with teachers and other site administrators to help guide them with working with their students. I threw in the little piece trying to accommodate a little, because I am okay with reducing what the initial request is. Again, we're hoping that these are short-term cuts, and from my perspective, where the librarians touch every kid in the school, gifted specialists, and I think this is what Mr. Hoffman was saying, they don't touch every kid in every school. They touch a percentage of kids in those schools.
Ms. Reese, are you supportive of the cabinet recommendation for the 150? Weren't you saying putting...
For the particular line item?
You said something related to busing.
I did. Trying to compromise a little, because I'm not okay with the librarians, and I'm not okay with the monitors. Since we're going line item by line item, I was trying to offer an option there where it could be a little more offset, because if we're trying to offset the others, if we can, we haven't gotten into that, but if we can offset some of the others by busing, that would be my preference.
Okay.
But it was a note from the initial conversation we had during our work study that I had listed.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other items that board members would like to discuss?
President Whitener.
Ms. Reese.
I would like to get clarification on, sorry, I've got all my papers here. There's lots of them. Clarification on the furlough days. So initially on Thursday when we met, we talked about this first line item, furlough non-paid days off, that was the initial one that's suggested for this May 22nd, so that could carry forward. That was the initial discussion on Thursday night when we got this, and that was teachers for that furlough day. Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, the 2 furlough days that are on the reductions are for next year. Those would be the professional development days after fall break and after spring break. The 2 furlough days have nothing to do with this year. This year's furlough day of May 22nd was approved last year and will take effect this year. Okay. So those are separate furlough days for next year.
Okay, and those are at $195,000 each. And so with that $195,000, because the second one indicates all staff, the first one does not. Is the $195,000 all staff minus the ones we've already said?
Both of the days are exactly the same. It's all staff that will.
So those are furlough days for all staff across the district that work with children.
Okay, so let me help you out with that, because HR had to correct us and the business department had to help us out with this. If you took the professional development days, there are no aides on those days. There are no bus drivers on those days. There are no lunch monitors. So it really is truly 12-month certified administrators and teachers. And that's really the only people affected by furloughs, because you don't take a furlough day when children are in session. And so to avoid that, you have to take the professional development days that we have, or the last day of school where kids are already home and teachers are doing grades.
Well, and the bus drivers, they're not paid for those days because they're hourly employees. and they wouldn't be working. Is that
That's
correct?
that's correct.
So that's why it excludes them.
That's correct.
So-
So secretarial staff, however, the attendance clerk, all of the district office, the grounds people, the trades folks are included in that. So part of the classified folks are, but not the hourly classroom aides.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So good clarity.
So those are each essentially all staff minus what we said.
Yes.
Okay. So then the additional furlough for the 12-month employees, that would then be a third furlough day for them. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct for those 12-month employees.
And I'm sorry, I'm asking clarification because, again, we got it on Thursday and we were trying to figure it out, so.
President Whitener.
Mr. Little.
I just wanted to make a comment on line item provided, the cell phones. And I appreciate the community's comments. I just want to remind the board and the community, you know, for some of the staff, it may be a benefit to them, but for certain critical services, particularly emergencies, IT, certain facilities folks, those that need to be notified in emergencies, it's very appropriate to provide a cell phone, particularly in a 24-hour notification scenario where somebody has to be on call. This is something I'm very familiar with in the medical field. You know, those that have positions that aren't required to be notified in an emergency, you know, we don't pay for cell phones in those cases, but folks are on call or required to take a call for an emergency. Those cell phones are provided for those folks, pagers or some way of communicating with them, because you don't want to be, to quote Poor Richard, Almanac from Benjamin Franklin, a little historical reference. You don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. So some of these critical services, you know, you need people to really be able to have access, and if they're having trouble with dealing with their personal cell phone plan or whatever, and it's not provided by the district because they have a budget challenge 1 month or whatever. President Widener made a great suggestion that we propose a dollar amount, and then the cabinet determines what those critical services are required to have a cell phone. What that dollar amount is, I'm not exactly sure.
Cabinet is proposing 30,000.
Right. Where's the sweet spot? Do we know where that is?
At the minimum, we believe we can get to the 30,000. We would try to do as much as possible because every dollar conserved this year helps us towards next year. So what we're saying is we'll guarantee the 30. We'll try for greater. I'd love to see it get to 50.
Okay.
But I haven't studied it enough because I can tell you right now, you're right. There are critical services that cannot. Josh has to have one. Danny Hinkle has to have one. I mean, they're just people that have to have them in case of emergencies in this district, and they get called out all weekend long, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
President Whitner.
Mr. Wojtowicz.
I'd just like to go through the cabinet's recommendation. I think, you know, as we've gone through this process, and first we started with elimination of all the librarians. We've had a discussion in reference to that, and I'm comfortable with the compromise that we've taken a look at. In reference to the gifted program, we've had a conversation with that. The cabinet's come forward with a recommendation. We've heard in reference to the lunch monitors, the concern from the community, so we've addressed that concern too as well in reference to that. Cell phones, we've had a conversation with that too as well here, the dialogue. With that being said, I'd like to move forward with the vote, please.
I'd like to, if we address the busing issue towards the lunch, the dedicated lunch aid specifically, that they're with the salaries.
So, President Widener, can you clarify that? Are you suggesting the 81,000? Is that what we're talking about?
I don't know if it needs all the 80,000, but board member, I would like to address a concern with me as well, as that I would like some cushion. Reason being, for high class size, I do not sit well with high class size within our middle schools and high schools, and that is my only concern with this budget. So if we expand busing and maybe an aide at every school, I don't know how much that costs, 30,000, I don't know, but that there is that we obviously need some reserve amount if we have increased class sizes. So I wasn't suggesting the full 80,000 towards that, whatever one aide is, lunch aid, part of that busing.
President Whitener.
Mr. Hoffman.
Just like to quickly say that I think we should also have been and should be considering our $100,000 marketing budget and a number of other items that are on this list that we haven't even talked about. So I understand that Mr. Wojciechowicz wants to call for a vote. I would humbly request that my fellow board members allow us to split this vote, since we have consensus on many items and not on others. I would appreciate if we could do the 2 votes separately, do the common reductions as 1 vote and do the 4 discussion items as a second.
Dr. Birdwell, you did address the marketing budget.
Yes, when we start looking at revenue streams, there are areas that we believe we can try to raise revenues to offset and put money back into the budget, and marketing is one of them that we're taking on. We're looking for sponsors for the newsletters and the annual reports, so that we will reach out to our business partners to look for that, to try to absorb that in addition to the postal cost. So working with the foundation, business partners, look for sponsorships, try to cut that at least in half and move forward. We do believe that marketing is important, that letting people know. We have 720 open enrolled students, and studying why they chose our schools. I'd like to know why. Substantial. $2.4 million come in from open enrollment, and that comes from marketing our district as an A district and A+ schools. So I do think a little bit of marketing investment is critical to any organization, and to have a 0 budget I think would be negligent on our behalf, but I do think I can reduce it by working with business sponsors to sponsor our newsletters and some of our marketing materials.
I understand the marketing piece, but the newsletters are one way we communicate with our constituents who have no children in our schools. As we think about our Trilogy community, and so if there are, obviously different ways we can market, whether it's using social media in a different way as well. But hopefully the board can discuss how we want to communicate and be transparent and address some of those in our board retreat as well.
Well, and I look forward to that discussion. Just the return on direct mail marketing is very, very low. So,
thank you.
So, I have requested that we split it.
President Weiner.
Mr. Little.
I'm with Board Member Wojciechowicz. I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay, so Mr.
As proposed by the cabinet, there's a few minor changes, but
Mr. Hoffman, then we need to amend the motion. The motion right now is to approve the budget. I amended the busing to be put towards a trained lunch aide at every campus.
So then I will move to amend the motion to take 2 separate votes. The first on the common reductions, the second on the cabinet 4 discussion items that we have just finished discussing.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
nay.
Nay.
Nay. Okay, the motion is to approve 2015-2016 budget with the amendment so noted with busing and lunch aids. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Dr. Thomason, would you like to just do a recap again?
Yes, President Whitener. We have the common cuts.
Yeah, if you just want to go through not everyone can see it this far.
We have the common reductions of the 2 furlough days, the reduction in the 0-hour busing, the reduction in the late hour busing, the reduction in the bus washing, the no accelerated reader, the cap on the insurance HSA program, the elimination of the district costs but still available to parents is the Explore, the plan, and the ACT tests. A partial elimination of district provided cell phones. We will try to whittle that down as close as we can to the minimal costs. And then the 10% district office operating expenses moved to Fund 515 and 520. Oh, I apologize. The reduction in the stipend for attendance incentive, that would be a 2-year reduction. And then we would move to the items for discussion, and that was the reduction and reorganization of media specialists for $375,000 savings. The reduction and reorganization of lunch monitors at a savings of approximately $125,000. That would be a change from the $225,000 due to the busing. The reduction and reorganization of gifted specialists of $150,000. The expansion of the busing range for high schools to 2-mile radius of a savings of $81,612. The elimination of the district cell phones of a beginning number of $30,000. And then the last one is the suspension of the attendance incentive over 2 years of $80,000.
Thank you.
Dr. Thomason, could you see that this information gets out to the principals for distribution to their staff tomorrow, please?
Absolutely, I'll get it out tomorrow.
Does that sum to a final balance?
That would be a balanced budget.
No, what's us in the black a few?
Because the busing number changed a little bit, it would be, we can get you an exact number, and if we move the $81,000 from the bus to the aides, that would be a positive balance of $10,814.
Okay. Yep.
We will send that out and get that to you. Again, I want to reiterate. Next board meeting, you'll see contracts for teachers. You'll see the benefits, and you can approve or not approve them. You could reduce the percentage based on what you so choose. Human Resources will begin educational meetings with all staff about HSAs so that everybody understands the health benefits. We will go out and meet with the staff on budgeting. Again, I encourage the district as they go forward in the fall to have further conversations about thinking forward. And again, just a reminder, had we received this year the district additional assistance equal to what we received last year, that was $3.6 million, we would not have had this conversation today. We would not have had this conversation today. But instead, our district additional assistance next year is only $584,000. And had that not been cut, we would not be making these reductions today. We would have a balanced budget without any of this because we cut $3.4 million today. Last year, we received $3.6 million in district additional assistance. So I just have to say, stay actively engaged at what happens at the state level because remember, state funding and local funding work together to fund our schools. And we have to follow up with revenue ideas. We agree to disagree many, many times, but I have to say this. I appreciate your openness, your candidness, your bluntness. I, I welcome your passion. I, again, I'm short-lived. I only have a few meetings left. I want to tell you it's been an honor to serve this district even through these difficult times. But I have never been a superintendent where I didn't have to make a reduction in a budget. I will look forward to just making my own personal reductions in my budget as I retire and learn to live without that stipend.
Hey, Dr. Birdwell, regarding that district additional assistance reduction from the state, an alternative way to look at that is if you hadn't leveraged $3.5 million a year for the next 40 years to build our middle schools before we had a funding source, we also would have been able to avoid this.
And isn't it great to know that those middle schools captured 94% of our students who had been going other places?
It's wonderful.
And,
that still
and when
doesn't
you
make
figure
it
the math out,
responsible.
and I'll let you speak, and let me speak, because it's my last time I'm ever discussing this. If you look at the number of students who attend those schools and you calculate the ADM that we receive, it funds the administrators, the teachers, the utilities, all staffing, and guess what? There's enough ADM to fund the lease. So
then why was
they actually are self-funding, but we're a bigger district. You have other operating costs that have to be taken into consideration. But if I isolated them by themselves, because there are 950 plus kids in those schools, they are self-funding. But a decision was made 3 years ago under different circumstances with different elements. Who would have ever dreamed that a legislature would reach back a year and punish a school district for following the law and take away that opportunity we had to have district charters and receive that $3.1 million in charter additional assistance?
A board member on this dais suggested that they would do that.
But you know, if you have that crystal ball, could you imagine that Common Core is still here today? Didn't guess that one right, did we?
I actually kind of did.
I would like to thank everyone for the time and energy that has been put into this. And as I do know, it's hard because the board can only discuss things up here, and you only see us as you see us. We didn't get to talk about the budget behind closed doors. Someone asked me, "Oh, don't you meet in executive session and you decide all this before you come out?" No. For people who think that this was all decided before, as you can see, it was not. That we did allow discussion and flexibility is throughout the process, and as you see, there are last-minute changes that occur. It's hard to not be passionate about it, but yet sometimes if we don't show emotion, you think that we don't hear you, and that's hard sometimes to control those pieces, and sometimes we don't, and that's just our human nature. So I would ask that we respect each other's human nature, and sometimes we get passionate about things, and we're not necessarily trained on how to diffuse budget issues amongst differing board members. There's no class for that. We all have different sets of perspectives and experiences. Our children are all in different stages of life, and the things that they're being affected with right now. What may have affected your children 10 years ago is completely different than what some of our children are being affected by, and same thing with the teaching profession, and the same with the administration profession. But I want to thank everyone for their time and efforts, and and just because we may disagree on 1 or 2 or 3 line items out of 100, it doesn't mean that we don't support you as individuals in all that you do. If you disagree with me on one particular line item or more, we disagree on that line item. But it doesn't mean I don't support this district moving forward as an entire organization and keeping in fact of what is important, and that's meeting student needs and how all those pieces fit together. I hope that we can move forward and that you don't take the context of what you see us here as board members doesn't mean that we don't support everyone and that we don't support our #1 rated district. It's just, this is who we are sometimes when you're put in this spot.
President Whitner, I just want to tell you as a board member, this has been an extremely difficult evening this evening. And I want you all to remember why we are having this meeting this evening, okay? It's our elected officials that have forced us to make this decision. And I want each and every one of you to be an advocate for the children in this community and this state. Remember, we are 48th in the country in reference to student expenditures. 48th. So just remember that. So please, please be contacting your elected officials so we do not have to repeat this again, please.
As we do move forward, as Dr. Birdwell mentioned, we do have cuts next year. So we will be here same time, same place. Unfortunately, but hopefully there is opportunities to share our experiences and share our stories, share how our children are impacted. I'm sure some of the cuts that were brought forward this year could possibly be addressed next year as well. But that we keep in mind the large picture that that we can move forward and support these decisions as a whole, and that we can move forward and support staff and support one another as we move forward. And I think that's an important piece that remember, I've seen it all. I've seen everyone pin each other against each other. I have. But as we can come together and as we move forward with this decision, that we're all moving forward together with it and that we all own it. I still own the sub issue at the high schools. I own it. I do. But some decisions have to be made. Cuts have to be made. And I just want to encourage everyone that we support one another as we move forward.
There are no further comments. I make the motion that we adjourn.
Are there any other future agenda items? 10.0. Okay, 11.0. Mr. Wojtowicz move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.